Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, and we have few attendees in this virtual meeting. So, thank you for joining us today for this first public meeting for the City of Newark Transportation Improvement District. Couple of pointers to begin with. This is a virtual meeting. This meeting has been recorded, and the recording will be available on City of Newark's website after the meeting in a couple of days. So you can check the recording also. Everyone is muted, and if you want to ask a question, there are ample opportunities after every module in this meeting and every subsection. We have a question and answer period. So I would request everyone to wait for that particular and answer slot to ask your questions. And if you can type your questions using the chat box, I think that will help because virtual meetings may have some issues with echoes and feedback. With that, basically, next slide, please. On today's agenda, we have 4 modules. We will have introduction and background information of Transportation Improvement District. Then we will go through the TID framework and key components. Some of the technical analysis that have been completed to this point, we will go through those. And the last module will be on next steps and what to expect after this. With that, I'll hand it over to Mary Ellen Gray, the Director of Planning and Development for City of Newark, and she will walk us through the first module on introduction. Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Maharesh. And thank you all for attending our first public outreach meeting on the City of Newark Transportation Improvement District, otherwise known as a TID. I welcome you all and appreciate you taking the time to participate in this important event. By way of background, when we started this process with the TID committee back in the spring of May 2019, and we had the plan of a public outreach meeting to inform the public of this effort, share the progress of the committee, and talk about next steps and get public feedback. We certainly did not even contemplate the possibility that we would be conducting this public meeting virtually from our dining room table, basements, kids' rooms, kitchen tables, or wherever we could get a good internet. I'm currently at my dining room table. You can see some Halloween stuff back there. My son is making dinner at the moment, so we're all adapting. But I do appreciate, but here we are. I do appreciate you taking the time to do that too. A quick story during the summer when I was working at home exclusively with my two school-age sons who are also exclusively at home. I'm sure you all have had similar experiences this summer. I take them to my youngest school's son parking lot where I could get access Wi-Fi from my car and continue to work and conduct meetings from my calls in the playground and get some exercise. I'm sure you all have similar stories of adaptation in this new environment. Similarly, we've had to adapt to outreach. Hence, it's not perfect, but we are learning and making improvements as we go, and we appreciate everyone's participation in this virtual meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to inform the public of this effort of developing a transportation improvement district for the City of Newark, share the progress of the TID committee that was formed by the City Council to provide feedback and guidance to the City of Newark on the TID process, talk about next steps, and get public feedback. The endeavor to put together a TID for the City of Newark is a team effort. The team members are comprised of the City of Newark staff, members of the Delaware Department of Transportation, members of AECOM consultants, and the TID committee. This is overseen by recommendations from the Planning Commission to the City Council, who is final approval authority of the process of the formation of the TID. This presentation will get into more detail as to the what and why the City of Newark decided to undertake this effort. nutshell, a TID creates a transportation impact fee that equitably distributes the cost of transportation improvements across a development community over the long term. As I just mentioned, this endeavor is a team effort. The leads of this team are comprised of myself and Sarah Coakley, who you'll be hearing from here shortly. She is the principal planner with the Delaware Department of Transportation, Division of Planning. Should you have any questions or concerns regarding this project, we encourage you to reach out to either one of us. This contact information will also again be displayed at the end of this presentation. A TID is a regulatory mechanism created by DelDOT. As with any such tool, the definitions can be a little dry, but bear with me here. A transportation improvement district is defined in DelDOT's standards and regulations for subdivision streets and state highway access as a geographic area defined for the purpose of securing required improvements to transportation facilities in that area by comprehensively coordinating with transportation planning partners, land use and transportation decisions. This regulatory mechanism establishes a process that includes a series of steps to be followed that will be described in this presentation. TIDs are created through an agreement by the local government and DelDOT. The agreement establishes the TID boundaries, the time frames, which is typically 20 years, a criteria and standards for adequate transportation, including multimodal, and the facilities needed and the roles of each participating agencies. The participating agencies develop a land use and transportation plan for the TID, identifying a projected build-out plan and a fee formula to fund the improvements, as well as a monitoring program to track the need for new projects. As projects are completed, they are incorporated into the TID agreement. So how does the TID work? The development of a TID does a detailed work, which will be discussed here in subsequent slides and here shortly. So the development of the TID, the detailed work involves forecasting increased traffic on transportation infrastructure due to development over time, a fee formula to fund the improvements that developers pay into. This is done so that development can not only forego what's called the traffic impact study process, whereby the threshold for requiring such a study is a development that generates 500 vehicles per day or more and 50 vehicles per hour. That's threshold, given Newark's comparatively small geographic size compared to that of Newcastle County, rarely is met for a proposed development. But also so that all proposed developments in Newark, regardless of proposed amount of traffic generated, will be required to take part in the TID. There are several reasons as to why it's a good idea, well, we feel it's a good idea, to create a TID. These include the creation of a TID for the City of Newark is a goal in the Newark's Comprehensive Development Plan 5. I'll talk more on this in the next couple of slides. TID projects advance DelDOT's Capital Transportation Program, whereby otherwise known as the CTP, is DelDOT's plan that identifies anticipated capital improvements by DelDOT over the next 6 years. Transportation projects identified in the Newark TID will advance in the DelDOT CTP, and as a result, get priority over other potential road projects. TID fees stay local, whereby funds that are collected will be established. A fund will be established to collect the developer fees to be utilized on local roads for road improvements. Establishing the developer fee up front puts all the developers on the same playing field, and they will know well in advance what the fee will be, which results in equitable treatment and known costs for developers. Finally, as previously discussed, since the traffic impact study, which can take up to 3 to 4 months to complete, is no longer needed. Development reviews can be expedited. As I just mentioned, the development of a TID is a goal in the Newark's Comprehensive Development Plan 5. This plan was adopted by City Council on September 26, 2016. The purpose is to better provide the systematic transportation improvements districts needed to support land development in locations identified as appropriate for development. Here's a screenshot of the goal for the Newark TID as described in the Comprehensive Development Plan 5, where the goal is to work with DelDOT to create a TID to reduce traffic congestion and prepare for future infill development by maximizing the efficiency of the existing transportation network, whereby maximizing the efficiency of the city's existing transportation network advances the city's vision as a sustainable community by reducing both traffic idling time, thereby improving air quality, and the need to widen or construct new roads, which is not only cost efficient, but also preserves open space. The Comprehensive Plan 5 articulated that the TID be comprised of the downtown area as described in the map on the screen. However, in talking with staff, DelDOT, the Planning Commission, the TID Steering Committee, and City Council, and the City Council.
Voter confusion. I'm a mom. I'm a grandma. I'm a student. I'm a frontline worker. Professor. Secretary of State. Quarantine.
Could we all put ourselves on mute? Very good. Thank you. The comprehensive plan articulated that the TID be comprised of the downtown area as described in the map on the screen. However, in talking with the staff, DelDOT, the Planning Commission, the TID Steering Committee, and the City Council all agreed and ultimately adopted the boundary map, which will be discussed, that given the current and projected growth patterns of the City of Newark, that it made sense to increase the boundaries beyond the downtown area. Newark isn't the only governmental entity in Delaware that has done or is in the process of developing a TID. Currently, there are 4 operational TIDs, which are indicated in purple here on the map. Hyatt's Corner, Southern Newcastle County, Weston, and Easton. Those are all in Newcastle County. And there are 5 which are currently under development. One in Newark, the other one in Chester, and those are indicated in the yellow. Newark, the Cheswold area, Kent North, Dover, US 13, Bay Road Corridor, Southeast Milford, and Henlopen. As I described above, the development of the TID is a process. Before we could start this process, the planning and development staff started meeting about half a year after I came on board, which is about the spring of 2017. And we started to discuss and meeting to just discuss the TID process and what we can do. And then we started meeting with Sarah Coakley from DelDOT and her staff. Discussions then commenced with the Planning Commission in June of 2018, and then with the City Council for their review and input on the overall TID process and the general makeup of the TID committee. The formation of the committee was approved by City Council on October 8, 2018. Special attention was paid to ensure that a diverse group of stakeholders was brought to the table. The stakeholders include the city staff from Public Works and Water Resources, the Planning and Development team, WMAPCO, Bike Newark, the representative from Bob McBride is also presenting this evening, the Planning Commission, the City of Newark Police, Downtown Newark Design Committee, the Development Community, University of Delaware, of course DelDOT, Newcastle County Government, and Newark residents from each of the 6 city council districts and 1 mayoral appointee. And one of those district representatives, Jim Jones, is also joining us this evening as a presenter. TID committee held their first meeting on May 8th, 2019, and apart from a month or two, has met on a monthly basis since then. All the meetings are open to the public. The meeting minutes, agendas, and meeting materials are posted on our Transportation Improvement District website. While this presentation will discuss the work of the committee up to now, essentially thus far, the TID committee has discussed the TID agreement between the State of Delaware Department of Transportation and the City of Newark, the TID boundaries, TID standards, and future conditions analysis. A key component of this process involves a TID agreement. The agreement that established the TID boundaries and horizon year and outlined this agreement that established the TID boundaries and horizon year and outlined the process for the service standards and development of the land use and transportation plan, as well as the infrastructure fee program, monitoring program, and scope of the agreement was adopted by Council on January 3rd, 2020. This agreement will be brought back to the Planning Commission for their recommendation and then to Council for adoption and additional 2 more times for amendments, as Sarah Coakley will articulate in a module for this presentation.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. That was very informative background information as well as introduction to TID. At this point, we will open up for questions on the first module that was presented by Mary Ellen. If anyone has any specific question, we will try unmuting everyone and see how that goes. If there is a lot of feedback and echo, then we will basically focus on asking question through the chat feature, which is on the Teams toolbar right next to the participants icon. So Savannah, can you try unmuting and see if the meeting still has good audio and no issues with that?
Everyone needs to unmute themselves individually, unfortunately.
Okay, that's fine. So if you have any questions, basically you need to either unmute yourself by clicking on the mic icon, or you can type your question in the chat box and we can go through those questions. Any questions thus far from the members of public and participants of this meeting on the background information provided by Mary Ellen? Okay. I will ask a couple of questions for the benefit of the group. The first question that I have is, Sarah or Mary Ellen, can you explain the individual role that DelDOT and City of Newark will play in this transportation improvement district for the City of Newark? What would the city do and what would DelDOT do for this district?
I'll let Sarah start with the DelDOT role.
Sarah, are you? I see Sarah is unmuted, but we just don't hear. In the interest of time, Mary Ellen, why don't we start with the city's role?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so our role is certainly once the TID is implemented, is approved, we would be managing the funds, of course, in conjunction with DelDOT, taking in the funds and overseeing the communicating with DelDOT on the projects that are coming in and letting them know what projects are coming in, and then apportioning the fee per unit fee to every project, and then keeping track of those projects, and then keeping a tally of those and communicating that with DelDOT as the projects move along in the process. And then we would, in that communication, with DelDOT, then periodically we would see whether we would need to update any of the plans to see when they have to meet the transportation projects need to be implemented.
Madras, you're on mute.
Okay, Sarah, we still cannot hear you. I don't know. Maybe you want to call back in if that's possible. While Sarah is trying to get back on and get her audio figured out, basically, DelDOT is an equal partner with City of Newark. We have been working with DelDOT since the beginning of this Transportation Improvement District process. And as Mary Ellen mentioned, that we had several monthly meetings for the last year and a half now. When the COVID pandemic hit, we switched to virtual meetings, but we still have our monthly meetings. And what DelDOT is doing is they are basically supporting City of Newark with a lot of technical analysis. A process for establishing a transportation improvement district requires several steps that we will go through in the next module. But DelDOT has been taking lead on that front and basically providing technical support and guidance in terms of formation of a transportation improvement district. So I think Sarah is trying to call in. DelDOT has completed up to this point the existing condition analysis for the roadway network in the district as well as other modes, and they have also completed future conditions analysis, and they are working on putting together a land use and transportation plan and finalizing that plan at this point. City of Newark and DelDOT also work through putting together the initial agreement at this point, and we will talk more about that in the next module. So both City of Newark and DelDOT are going hand in hand in this, and other partners like Wilmapco and the other committee members that Mary Ellen just mentioned, they are also supporting this effort very actively. And in that vein, whilst basically still Sarah is trying to, Sarah, are you back on? Okay. So I'll ask another question, a pretty quick question for the benefit of this group, and that is, how does this Newark TID vision align with the Wilmapco's planning vision for the region? And I know Heather is online also, so I would I put you on spot, Heather. If you can jump in and basically maybe give us a quick overview of how the Wilmapco's overall transportation planning vision aligns with transportation improvement districts.
Sure, absolutely. So we actually, we haven't been always calling these TIDs, but one of the earliest plans that I can remember Wilmapco working on was the US 40 corridor plan, where we looked comprehensively at the Route 40 corridor and worked in partnership with DelDOT and Newcastle County to come up with a long-range vision for the area. as well as a fair way to phase in transportation improvements that would be coordinated with development. And so this really worked well, because then instead of having the last developer in foot the bill for everything or not be able to proceed because all the capacity of the roads were used up, we were able to move forward in a coordinated fashion. And so that's exactly what we're hoping to see for Newark as well, if the town goes ahead and approves the TID, because it really fairly shares the cost of transportation improvements between DelDOT and private developers, and really makes a much more predictable planning process as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Heather. Again, Sarah, I'm checking back with you. Are you back on? I see you're on and you're muted. So if you can unmute and see if your audio is working. Okay. I see Sarah is still still on mute. What? Yeah. Savannah, can you check? Sarah has her hand up. If you can see if she has typed anything in the. Okay. I think we will go to the next module and see if Sarah can join back. Savannah, while we are in the second module, can you please check offline with Sarah to see if she can get back on and if her audio issue can be resolved? It's strange because Sarah was on just before the meeting and we had a conversation on this platform and something may have happened to her audio feed. So I'll begin with module 2, which is about TID Framework. And Sarah is going to present this as soon as she is back on. She can take over from me. But this module will focus on basically the key components of a TID, Transportation Improvement District. How does a geographic area for TID is selected? And what is the horizon year, as in like what future year are you going to plan the TID improvements for, and project your land use patterns going into future and figure out what improvements are required for the TID area. So that's those two components, the geographic area selection and horizon year, are pretty important component for establishing a TID. And then once that is established, then it is basically about initiating the process for putting together a TID agreement between the signatory partners, that is the City of Newark and DelDOT. And we will go through all those things in this module too. Next slide, please. So Sarah, again, I'm checking with you. If you're on, feel free to jump in at any point once you have the audio back. But as I mentioned, the key components and steps for a TID, they are depicted on this particular graphics. A TID is usually legally established in Delaware through a written agreement between DelDOT and the local government. The agreement specifies boundaries of a TID and the target horizon year, as I mentioned, and it also defines what is to be considered adequate transportation facilities in a TID. So what is adequate? What would make the level of service and overall transportation performance and experience good for both the residents and visitors and businesses within the district? The standards that are put together are known as service standards. The local government develops a parcel specific land use plan, and Mike will go through that pretty soon in the next module to give you an overview of all the land use projections for short term and long term. Those projections are basically within the participant boundary and based on the target horizon year. And Del.dot uses land use plan to establish future traffic conditions in the horizon year and identify needed transportation improvement based on that horizon year and that land use pattern. It also considers the background traffic in that estimate. Del.dot and local government agree on an infrastructure fee program once they have basically these service standards established, and future development to contribute to cost that is required to fund transportation improvements. Again, that's only a component, that's only a % of the cost, and Del.dot matches the remaining cost. So that is established in the fee structure when the fee structure is put together later in the process. We are not there yet. TID is implemented through fee collection and Del.dot traffic monitoring and reports, basically the updates to the conditions within the TID. Local government assistance is put together for prioritizing TID improvements for inclusion in the Del.dot CTP or Capital Transportation Plan. So it's a collaborative process between Del.dot and City of Newark, not just at the beginning of the process, but also through once the TID is established, it is an ongoing process. Savannah, I think Sarah is also, she's in the lobby again. If you can check if she's back on. Geographic area selection participant boundary is basically defines the parcels. It's a polygon or area boundary, so that it uses land use within that area. And the facility boundary defines transportation facilities, and it's a line and node boundary basically, because most of the facilities are linear or node based, so like roadway infrastructure or trails. Those are the linear boundaries, or if you're looking for transit stops or hubs or specific intersections, those are basically nodal points within a TID. So a facilities boundary is basically looking for nodes and linear facilities, as opposed to the polygon boundary for TID, which is the participant boundary that defines which parcels are included within the TID and how those parcels are projected to develop or redevelop over the next few years, which up to the horizon year. Having said that, next slide, please. I will request Jim Jones, who is a member of the TID committee and very active member, and he has a real interest in City of Newark's municipal growth over the past few years. So over to you, Jim, if you can walk us through how.
Okay, thank you, Mayuresh. Yeah, thanks everybody for showing up for this. I want to just say give a little historical background to kind of leads us to how we selected, or what we were thinking of when we selected the boundaries for this TID. The slide there shows 150 years ago, when the problem of traffic in Newark was a lot simpler. There was one main street, a couple side streets, and there's no historical record to suggest that there was any traffic congestion at all. The area around the town was surrounded by farms, and so I imagined that perhaps on market day, you might have had some horses and wagons getting into a bottleneck up there at what we now know as South College Avenue and Main Street, but by and large, traffic wasn't an issue. Next slide, please. Looking back 80 years after the invention of the automobile, by just before World War II, automobiles were relatively common, and so were traffic problems. So the map actually shows some of the attempts to go and deal with it within the boundaries of Newark, which are shown there in red. You can see a couple streets in white: Cleveland Avenue, Delaware Avenue, and Park Place, which offered alternative routes across town from east to west. You can also see a couple of guys on motorcycles there to enforce some of the new laws, like you couldn't just go pull across the street on Main Street to go and gas up in whatever direction you wanted, those kinds of things. So there was a combination of regulation and then actually some public works improvements. Still had a big problem though, which is you had railroads surrounding 3 sides of the town and White Clay Creek, so there was a limit to how much you could actually fix within the town limits itself. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. There we go. And so this is actually history nowadays. This is 50 years ago, if you can imagine. But you can see that the development of other parts of Newcastle County wound up having a big effect on traffic here in Newark. Those purple areas that you see are all farms that got turned into housing developments. And if you looked at a modern map, you'd see that there's a lot more purple and a lot less rural space. But the road network, with the exception of I-95, it didn't change. So in other words, roads that dated back from the 19th century were trying to handle all the new traffic flow. And it also meant that a lot of the traffic was generated from outside of town. So efforts to go and solve traffic problems within Newark have to go take into account what's going on outside of Newark. And therein lies the difficulty of coordinating between the city, county, and state, and even adjacent states in order to go and fix things. So the TID is an attempt to go and deal with that. Next slide, please. All right, this shows the map that we came up with, the boundaries that the committee is going to propose to City Council for approval. The yellowish area that you see is the actual limits of the City of Newark today. All right. The red boundary is the participant boundary, which encompasses the area where we think development might happen within the next time period. And so those are the people that have a stake in trying to solve this problem. And then the green dashed lines and the green circles represent roads and intersections where improvements could be made that would have an impact on traffic here in Newark. So that's my contribution here. I think we go to the next slide and you can take over again.
I'm again checking if Sarah is back on. Our sincere apologies.
Hi,
good. You can
you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Good to hear.
Sorry about that. All right, thank you, Jim. Now I'm going to summarize the facilities that are included within the TID. So there are several key roadway segments for which we did some analysis already that I'll get into later. But these key roadway segments include State Route 72 and State Route 2, from State Route 4 to Possum Park Road, State Route 896 from the municipal boundary to the Maryland-Delaware line, State Route 4 from Elkton Road to Maris Road, State Route 273 from Wedgwood Road to Possum Park Road, and Elkton Road from the Maryland-Delaware line. There are a total of 64 intersections within the TID, and this includes 52 signalized intersections and 12 unsignalized intersections. And there are approximately 32 miles of roadway network included in the TID. And then there are three transit agencies that provide public transit services in the TID area. And the recommendations from the recent Newark area transit study will be considered for inclusion in the TID. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Bob McBride, TID committee member, who's going to go over the committee's recommendation on the target horizon year.
Hi, I'm Bob McBride. I'm a resident of District 1 in Newark, and I represent Bike Newark as the chair. What we were targeted with doing was coming up with a horizon year for the see how far ahead we could see to anticipate traffic, population, and other planning needs for Newark. As we considered it, the standard planning practice of looking 25 years ahead seemed to be about right to us as a group. During the past 25 years, Newark has only grown larger and increased in population. And in this next 25-year horizon, we don't expect the land area of Newark to grow much larger, although it might, but the population and land use will likely change with at least some growth. This impacts traffic flow, even if the vehicles we're using tomorrow are very different than the ones we use today. And so we think that setting as long as we can amend the future year at any time as part of the TID, the committee recommends that we use 2045 or 25 years in the future as the right number for our transportation improvement planning for Newark. Glad to be helpful on this.
Thank you so much, Bob. The initial TID agreement was approved by City Council in January of 2020 and executed in March of this year after Council considered recommendations by the TID Committee and the Planning Commission. And right now, the agreement only includes the boundaries, the target horizon year, and the process for developing and implementing the TID. It will be amended as each additional element is added to the TID. So it'll be amended to include the service standards, the land use and transportation plan, the TID CTP, which is the list of improvements and their costs that Delaware and the city will eventually agree on to be funded by the TID, the infrastructure fee program and monitoring program. As each of those elements is approved by the city and DelDOT, they'll be added to the initial, they'll be added to the TID agreement.
This is the next opportunity for all participants to ask any questions that you may have or provide any feedback on the key components of TID that were just discussed in this particular module. Again, if you have any questions, please either unmute yourself by clicking on the mic symbol and or type those questions in the chat box. I will ask few questions if there are no other questions, just for the information of the group, but I would definitely like to see some questions coming from the participants, because this is we would like to make this as more of an interactive experience of discussion rather than just presentation of information. So I'll encourage basically any questions. I see a hand up. Please go ahead.
It's Representative Ed Osinski. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I understand that the developers pay fees that will partially fund the project, and DelDOT picks up the remaining funding. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Who has the final approval of the projects? I know once design and everything is developed, is it City Council that has final approval on what the project will look like?
So this is Sarah. So the TID agreement will just spell out like the locations of the projects and their costs. And then they'll still need to go through our DelDOT's and MAPCO's regular project prioritization process. And then once they are in DelDOT's 6-year capital transportation program, then at that point, they'll go through our regular public involvement process. And then like the specific scope will be finalized through that public involvement process. And then the city can also like request TID projects, request that we like move them along quicker as well.
Because I recall a project, it was somewhat contested, or Library Avenue and Cleveland Avenue. And I don't know if it's different than this TID type of project, but I was told City Council has complete approval authority, and basically it was out of DelDOT's hands. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I think as Sarah mentioned, basically the standard improvements that will be identified as a part of this TID exercise, they will go through the process collaboratively between DelDOT, MAPCO, and City of Newark for the purpose of TID execution. Any other questions or comments or feedback on the TID component?
Well, I'm still not quite wrapping my head around that. You're saying it's a collaborative decision making. So if City Council does not approve, does the project still move forward because DelDOT has funded it? I'm still a little confused on who's got the final approval on the projects.
So
For the TID, both have to agree. Both the city and DelDOT have to agree that a project's going to be included in the TID.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions on the components of a TID or TID agreement from the group? Okay, so we will move into the next module, which will basically focus on completed technical analysis up to this point. So again, back to you, Sarah, with the technical analysis.
Thank you. So in this module, we're going to present the purpose, methodology, and results of the technical analyses that have been completed to date. And these include an existing conditions analysis, the city's land use forecasts, recommended service standards for the TID, and then we did a traffic analysis of future land use impacts in the 2045 horizon year. The purpose of the existing conditions analysis is to serve as a baseline with which to compare the future land use and transportation scenarios. DelDOT used Synchro traffic impact analysis model to determine the existing intersection delay and travel times along 5 key roadway corridors. The analysis included signal optimization at all signalized intersections, which assigns green time to the approaches based on the percentage of capacity used. So the higher traffic approaches with less capacity remaining get more green time with the signal optimization function. And then the analysis was based on traffic counts conducted in September of 2019. This slide shows the existing intersection delay during the weekday morning peak hours of 7 to 9 a.m. For this slide and the next one, the meaning of the symbols is as follows. The square symbols on the map are the signalized intersections. The diamond symbols are the always stop controlled intersections. And the triangle symbols are the two-way stop controlled intersections. The green symbols are the signalized or always stop controlled intersections with overall average level of service E or better, and the two-way stop controlled intersections with level of service E or better for all of the stop controlled approaches. This means an average of 80 seconds of delay or less at signalized intersections and 50 seconds of delay or less at unsignalized intersections. The orange symbols are the signalized or always stop controlled intersections with overall average level of service E, but with one or more approaches with level of service F. This means at least one approach exceeds the 80 seconds of delay at signalized intersections or 50 seconds of delay at unsignalized intersections. The red symbols are the signalized or always stop controlled intersections with overall level of service F, average delay exceeding 80 seconds at signalized locations or 50 at always stop controlled intersections. Also, two-way stop controlled intersections with at least one stop controlled approach level of service F. And then there's one signalized intersection, Capitol Trail and Cleveland Avenue, that is overall F in the morning peak hours currently. It has an average delay of about 154 seconds, and it's the eastbound approach that is making the greatest contribution to that delay. And then there are two signalized intersections that have overall average delay of less than 80 seconds, but have at least one approach that exceeds 80 seconds of delay. And these are the intersections of 896 at Welsh Track Road and Inspiration Boulevard, and it's the eastbound approaches at both that exceed that 80 seconds of delay. Next slide. This slide shows the existing intersection delay during the weekday evening peak hours of 4 to 6 p.m. As you can see, the p.m. peak period is worse than the morning peak period, and this is common in urban areas such as Newark. And there are two signalized intersections with overall level service F, more than 80 seconds of delay. And these are the Capitol Trail and Cleveland Avenue, Woodlawn Avenue intersection, both the eastbound and westbound approaches, with an average intersection delay of 187 seconds, and then the Elkton Road and Route 4 intersection, and that is the northwest and northeast approaches. that are causing the delay there, with an average of 104 seconds of delay for that intersection. There's also one two-way stop-controlled intersection with at least one of the stop-controlled approaches exceeding 50 seconds of delay, and this is the intersection of Morrows and Kensington Lane, and it is the westbound approach of that intersection with a 60-second delay. And then there are 6 signalized and 1 all-way stop-controlled intersection that have at least one approach that is level service F, exceeding the 80 seconds for signalized locations or 50 seconds for stop-controlled. And these are the following intersections: State Route 896 at Wells Track Road, Discovery Boulevard, North College Avenue, and Cleveland Avenue. Also 896 at Inspiration Boulevard, Capitol Trail and Possum Park Road, Library Avenue and Wyoming Road, and South Chapel Street and Wyoming Road. Next slide. In addition to intersection delay, we also completed an arterial travel time analysis for 5 key roadway segments in the TID, and this slide shows the travel time results for the weekday morning peak period. And so the arterial segment 1 is Route 72 and Route 2 from State Route 4 to Possum Park Road. And the existing travel time there is 6 minutes and 29 seconds in the northbound direction and 7 minutes 25 seconds in the southbound direction. For arterial segment 2, which is 896 from Wells Track Road north to Cleveland Avenue, the existing travel time is 9 minutes 49 seconds in the northbound direction and 10 minutes 18 seconds in the southbound direction. And then arterial segment 3 is State Route 4 from Elkton Road to Marrows Road, and the existing travel time there is 5 minutes 11 seconds in the eastbound direction and 5 minutes 21 seconds in the westbound direction. And then arterial segment 4 is Route 273 from Marrows Road to Castro Mill Road. And the existing travel time along there in the eastbound direction is 8 minutes 53 seconds, and then 7 minutes 54 seconds in the westbound direction. And then arterial segment 5 is Elkton Road from Otts Chapel to Amstel, and the existing travel time is 4 minutes 48 seconds in the northeast direction and 5 minutes 21 seconds in the southwest direction. Next slide. This slide shows the travel time results for the weekday evening peak period, and similar to the intersection delay, the travel times are worse in the evening peak period along both directions of all of the segments. So for arterial 1, which is Route 72 and Route 2, the existing travel time in the PM peak period is 7 minutes 31 seconds going north and 8 minutes 39 seconds going south. For arterial segment 2, which is State Route 896, the existing travel time is 10 minutes 50 seconds in the northbound direction and 10 minutes 43 seconds in the southbound direction. And then arterial segment 3 is Route 4 from Elkton to Marrows. The existing travel time is estimated at 5 minutes 46 seconds in the eastbound direction and 5 minutes 43 seconds in the westbound direction. Arterial segment 4 is State Route 273 from Marrows to Castro Mill. The existing travel time is 9 minutes 23 seconds in the eastbound direction and 8 minutes 40 seconds in the westbound direction. And then finally, arterial segment 5 is Elkton Road, and the existing travel time is 5 minutes 50 seconds in the northeast direction and 6 minutes 15 seconds in the southwest direction.
Thank you so much, Sarah. One quick clarification, the numbers that you see in the table are all in seconds, and they also are with decimal points. That's because of the technical analysis that was conducted. These are all very detailed level results. What Sarah is explaining is basically it's for us easier to understand travel time in minutes and seconds rather than just seconds. So there is some discrepancy between the numbers that you see in the table versus what Sarah is saying, but Sarah is making it easy for all of us to understand in terms of minutes and seconds. Having said that, basically, are there any questions related to existing conditions analysis? I know this is a lot of technical information in terms of both performance for intersections as well as travel time along certain segments and corridors. Any specific questions on existing condition performance based on your experience as residents of Newark? Okay, I will ask a question for the benefit of the group. Sarah, you mentioned about basically signal optimization and like signalized intersections are optimized for getting these results. So what exactly is signal optimization, and are the City of Newark signals currently optimized for most part?
Yep. So signal optimization, basically, it's how the green time is assigned. So it keeps the overall cycle length the same and doesn't change the type of traffic signal. It just changes how the green time is assigned, and it assigns more green time to basically the approaches that have worse traffic, that have less capacity remaining. And then our TMC Traffic Management Center, they using like real time travel information, they periodically make adjustments. And then also anytime we have a project in an area that involves our traffic signals, they get looked at and optimized as well. So that's why we thought it was appropriate to include that function in both the existing conditions and future analyses.
Thank you, Sarah. I think, are there any questions in the chat box? Savannah, can you check if there are any questions?
Yes, there's one question from Tom P. He said, what effect do you think the pandemic will have on long-term work at home and hence less traffic?
Sarah, you want to take that question?
We don't really know, because we don't really know whether it's going to be long term or not. But I know, like in the transportation field, the move towards autonomous vehicles itself had the potential to decrease traffic in some areas. So with COVID, we'll have to wait and see like how long it lasts. And some people may continue to work from home, but some offices will choose not to.
Yeah, and I think another thing that DelDOT has is they have a continuous counting program. They have permanent counting stations at certain locations on the roadways within the state. So there has been a constant effort that is going on to monitor what is the impact of like whether traffic is coming back up or how quickly it is coming back up to the level that it was before the pandemic. So there will be definitely monitoring that will be involved, and those considerations will be looked into when there is the next time when we are looking into updating the analysis for Newark TID.
Added to the chat box. She said that she believes we're back up to 85% of the normal traffic volumes.
That's a good information to have. So yeah, like definitely that will be taken into consideration. What is the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic traffic levels, and that will be taken into consideration for TID assessment as well. Any other questions on the existing condition analysis? If not, I will move into the next subsection, which is on existing and future or projected land use. And I'll request Mike to present the land use component.
Sure, thank you. Again, Mike Fortner, I'm a planner with the City of Newark. My part is the objective after looking at the current conditions. The objective of the TID is to create a transportation model that meets the needs of future projected growth in the City of Newark. So if we go to the next slide, please. So to make this model, we completed a future land use projection based on the City of Newark's Comprehensive Development Plan 5 and the City of Newark Zoning Code, as well as reviewed current and anticipated future development trends. The future land use projections were put into 3 categories. The first category is called pipeline. These are projects that are either under construction, not built yet, but under construction right now, or has turned in a development plan that is going to be reviewed by the Planning Commission in the near future. So those were considered projects in the pipeline. The next category was short-term projects. And these are projects that we anticipated would happen within the next 10 years. Basically that we see a lot of development around these properties, and we anticipate them redeveloping in a short-term basis. So within the next 10 years. And then the final category was long-term, which are projects that we project to happen more than 10 years away, but within the 25-year scope. So from 10 to 25 years, longer-term projects that we don't think are going to develop anytime soon, but 10 years or more from now would be a likely target for a redevelopment. We reviewed the city parcel by parcel, and we reviewed its current zoning and also the trends of zoning changes in that area. What would we anticipate our zoning change requests to be? And then we established a projection of net density. So we look at a property that's zoned for apartments. What kind of density could they get? If it's a redevelopment project, let's say there's a smaller apartment building there, we would subtract the current development out of it, and we would get a net growth for that parcel. And we did that again, parcel by parcel, to establish what future growth would mean. And we categorize those into a pipeline, short-term or long-term projects. So we established the net for future development and the project to create this future transportation needs of the future, which includes automobiles, bicycles, pedestrians, and transit needs. The map that you see here is a map from our comprehensive development plan, and we divide the city up into these 6 planning areas, so we use that as the first kind of a guide to create our transportation projections. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So in this slide shows the projected net development of each planning area, and the net increase in residential units and the net increase in commercial spaces. As you can see, a significant amount of the projected increase in units in commercial areas projected for planning section A, which is shown here in green. This includes our downtown, which we anticipate significant future redevelopment, and also around the college campus, particularly a lot of student units, apartment units targeted to students are being redeveloped from lower density uses. We also see a lot in C, where we have the Star campus. It's shown here in kind of a brown color. We have the Star campus, lots of new commercial footage happening there. And also, there's less growth projected on the outer areas of the city, where there's more single-family development. One possible exception to that for future development is the Newark Country Club, which we modeled for in this area if it redevelops, likely into single-family houses. And we included that in the TID model, and it would be part of the funding, part of the fee program. Go ahead and go to the next area, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide where I try to show is sort of the hot spot, so of current and future development, and it's shown inside the circles. So those areas specifically are areas that we see or anticipate seeing future growth, significant growth, currently hotspots and into the future. These areas and areas outside the circle, while there will likely be some development and redevelopment projects over the next 25 years, are not anticipated to grow or redevelop as intensely as in the areas in the circle, in the circles. Again, with this kind of hotspot map, We see a lot of the hotspots focused on the center core of the city around downtown and around the University of Delaware campus and along South Main Street. That's going east-west or southwest, south-north, blah, 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 outside the city towards the Maryland state line. And of course, there's the Star campus, which is, of course, is a very significant growth area. And of course, in the model, a big factor could be the redevelopment of the Newark Country Club golf course you see in the north part of the city into a residential development as well. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mike. There's a lot of information on existing and projected land use. Any questions from the participants on the information that Mike just presented? Again, you can type your questions or just unmute yourself and ask your questions. If there are no questions, I will do the same thing for the benefit of the group. I'll prompt a question. I think that may be helpful for the participants. Mike, when does the clock start on the TID? So you said there are some developments that are currently planned, either they are under construction or the plans are submitted. Will they be included in TID? And when does the actual clock start? Which ones will require a paying fee into TID versus doing a TIS?
I imagine it starts when, of course, council adopts the TID, and I might have to defer to Sarah, but projects that have are in the pipeline now probably wouldn't be included in the fee structure of the TID, though we are using it to model our growth. And I have to defer to Sarah on some specifics on exactly when and what projects would be in.
Yeah, usually we wouldn't require participation in the TID and paying the fee until the final agreement that includes the fee structure in it is executed after City Council and DELOT approve it.
Okay. Thanks, Mike and Sarah. Any other questions from the group? Just one quick other question that comes to my mind is what happens if a development or the projected development that you just showed, Mike, if that doesn't happen as per the anticipated projection? How is that reflected for the updated analysis with the TID?
Well, and again, I'll defer to Sarah. I understand that we are constantly reevaluating, and as things come in, and this model gets updated. But you know, the specifics of the modeling, I don't know if it's as important as that we're anticipating this growth in these areas, and whether a parcel develops that way or not. We would change and adapt to the plan, but I'll go ahead and defer to Sarah.
Yeah, Mike's correct. So we like to do a comprehensive update of each TID at least every 5 years, or anytime there's a significant update or change to the comprehensive plan. And with the using the Synchro TIA to do the modeling, we can easily change out land uses for individual parcels.
Thanks, Mike and Sarah. That was helpful. So before we move into the next subsection, which is on service standards, all the information that Mike just presented right now about the future land use and potential developments that are likely to, or redevelopments for that matter, that are likely to come online, they directly reflect into additional trips on City of Newark's roadways, in addition to the background traffic that will grow between now and that future horizon year. So all of that basically needs some understanding of how those service standards will be applied. And I would request Sarah to basically go through the next subsection of this module on service standards to explain that.
Yep, so now we're going to review the draft service standards, and upon agency approvals by City of Newark and DelDOT, these will be used to develop the transportation component of the land use and transportation plan for the TID. And these standards will help us to identify the triggers for determining what type of transportation improvements are needed, and also when and where they are needed within the TID. So what are service standards? Service standards are the standards that specify what is to be considered adequate transportation infrastructure in the TID. They may include levels of service, but shall also include desired typical sections for roads and the standards for the presence and frequency of transit service. And the standards should be set collaboratively by DelDOT and the local government, including some measure of public involvement. And so that is the primary purpose of this public meeting tonight, and people will have the opportunity to comment on it online as well, just to get feedback on the draft service standards. And so the TID committee has agreed to present these draft service standards this evening for public feedback. And so this slide covers the capacity or delay related service standards. So the first is a standard for overall average intersection delay during peak periods, and it allows for a maximum of 80 seconds at signalized intersections and 50 seconds at roundabout and always stop controlled intersections. And this delay measure is an average of all of the approaches at an intersection. The next is a standard for intersection control delay during peak periods for two-way stop controlled intersections. And the standard there is a maximum of 50 seconds of delay for the left turns from the major street. Also included as a capacity standard is a travel time standard, allowing a maximum increase of 5% in the total travel time per segment for the 5 key segments that we reviewed existing conditions for earlier. And the travel time standard is to be applied after first considering the intersection delay standards. Also for the intersection delay standard only, intersections that exceed the delay standard under existing conditions shall have improvements done first, not funded through the TID to reduce delay to the standard. And so there's one intersection that meets that criteria, which is Cleveland, Woodlawn, and Capitol Trail. And the thought behind that exception is that because it's an existing problem and is existing level service F and almost 3 minutes of delay there already, the committee didn't feel like it was right to recommend that future development pay for an existing problem. So that's why that exception is included in the draft service standards. So this slide here covers the other recommended draft service standards. For geometric standards, the use of posted speed limits is assumed. The DelDOT functional classification map and applicable DelDOT design standards, our complete streets policy are assumed for the identification and design of improvements on state roads. For typical sections on state maintained roads, the following minimum widths are required: 10-foot through lanes, 10-foot turning lanes, except for two-way left turn lanes have to be a minimum of 12 foot wide, and then 15 foot for a right turn lane if a 5-foot bike lane is included. 5-foot shoulders on local roads, 8-foot shoulders on collector and minor arterial roads, and 10-foot shoulders on principal arterial roads. And then City of Newark regulations, requirements, and standards shall be used for all city-maintained roadways. For access and intersection control, DelDOT's Development Coordination Manual shall apply to access and state-maintained roads, and subdivision streets within city limits will be up to city standards and for private or municipal maintenance. On state-maintained roads, roundabouts shall be considered first, and this consideration shall be part of a larger intersection control evaluation. And other factors that are to be considered also include safety, capacity, and right-of-way needs and property impacts. And then proposed changes to intersection control shall be based on evaluation of crash data and designed in accordance with the Delaware Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices and other criteria as may be adopted by DelDOT for that purpose. For transit, we'll consider the recommendations from the 2019 Newark Area Transit Study. There are 3 existing transit providers, and so the addition of new stops and the amenities required at each stop will be at the discretion of the individual respective transit providers. And then the service standards also specify that capital transit improvements are eligible for TID participation. For the aesthetic standards, they reference DELDOT's regular aesthetic treatments, and it does include an opportunity for City Council, if they choose to identify specific locations within city limits where the same decorative street signs that were used in the 2020 Main Street project can be used. For drainage, where new road construction is proposed to address otherwise substandard conditions, adequate drainage has to be provided. DELDOT drainage standards will apply to state roads, and city standards will apply to city roads. And then finally, for bicycle and pedestrian facilities, the city's bike plan will be referenced when making design decisions related to bike facilities. And then existing and proposed pedestrian crossing treatments should be evaluated and designed using national and local research. And the preferred design is to incorporate a median refuge island to create a two-stage crossing. And now I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the draft recommended service standards.
Thank you, Sarah. I think, as Sarah mentioned, the primary focus for this particular public meeting is to get feedback on these service standards. And I know that there are a lot of service standards, a lot of information presented in this meeting. If you have any questions right now, please definitely ask those questions. But if you want to digest this information and ask questions later on, this presentation and both the recording of this particular meeting will be posted on City's website. So please feel free to visit that website, check these standards again, maybe listen through the recording for this particular segment. And if you have any questions, there is a survey form on City's website and the contact information that we will post again at the end of the meeting. We encourage you to review these and provide your feedback. Any questions from the group on the service standards right now? Okay, I know this is a lot of information, so please definitely revisit on City's website and ask if you have any question or any feedback. Sarah, why don't we move into the next subsection of this module 3, which is on the future conditions?
Yep, sounds good. So DELDOT used the same methodology as the existing conditions analysis to analyze the projected future traffic conditions based on the future land use plan. And the results of this analysis were used to inform the selection of the recommended capacity or delay-related service standards. And then they will also be used to identify the locations within the TID where auto-oriented transportation improvements are needed. This map uses the same symbology as the existing conditions intersection delay map to show the anticipated future intersection delay in the weekday morning peak period. And there's only one intersection not anticipated to meet the intersection delay service standard. And again, that's the Capitol Trail and Cleveland Avenue Woodlawn intersection. However, this intersection is already not meeting the standard in the existing conditions. So therefore, it meets the exception in the draft service standards that it shall have other improvements done first, not funded through the TID, to reduce delay to the standard. And that is so that future development is not held responsible for fixing a pre-existing condition. This slide shows the anticipated future intersection delay in the weekday evening peak period. In addition to Capitol Trail and Cleveland Avenue intersection, there are two other signalized or always stop controlled intersections that are anticipated to not meet the intersection delay standard. And these are the intersections of State Route 4 and State Route 72 and South Chapel Street and Wyoming Road. And then there are 3 two-way stop-controlled intersections that have at least one approach that does not meet the delay standard. And these are the intersections of Mars Road and Kensington Lane, New London Road and Hopkins Bridge Road, and New London Road and Wedgwood Road. And while it is the minor approaches that have delays that exceed the standard, we definitely need to evaluate these locations further to make sure that the left turns from the major approaches meet the standard, and also make sure that there are no safety issues as a result of the anticipated delays on the minor approaches. We also completed the arterial travel time analysis for the 5 key roadway segments based on the future land use. And this slide shows the results for the weekday morning peak period. And with the exceptions of segment 5, which is Elkton Road, and the eastbound direction of segment 3, which is Route 4, the travel times increased. And these locations that didn't show a travel time increase experienced a decrease in travel time only along the through approaches is what was analyzed. And this was caused by the differences in traffic growth between the through approaches and the side street approaches, and the signal optimization function, which gives more green time to the lower capacity approach. The map shows the segments and the directions of segments that are anticipated to exceed the travel time standard, which is a maximum increase of 5% in travel time. And so these include both directions of segment 2, which is 896, and the northbound direction of segment 1, which is Route 72. This slide shows the travel time results for the weekday evening peak period, and similar to the morning peak period, with the exception of segment 5, Elkton Road, the travel times increased, and Elkton Road experienced a decrease in travel time along the through approaches, and again, that's because of the signal optimization, which gives more time, green time, to the lower capacity approach. So basically, there's so much increased traffic expected along Elkton Road that the signal optimization gives more time along there. We also have a project under construction there very soon also that's expected to improve conditions along Elkton Road. And then the map shows the segments and directions of segments that are anticipated to exceed the 5% increase in travel time standard. And these include, again, both directions of 896, the southbound direction of 72, and then also the westbound direction of segment 3, which is State Route 4. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the future condition analysis.
Thanks, Sarah. Any participants on the future condition analysis? I know there's a lot of information to digest. TID committee has been looking at this information over the last few months, and we are presenting some of this information in 1.5 hours right now. But again, feel free to revisit this presentation on the city's website. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. At this moment, I will ask one quick question, basically related to future condition analysis, Sarah. And that's a key question in terms of whether a TID, implementation of a TID will accelerate development or redevelopment in Newark. What was the experience? I know earlier Mary Ellen showed example of some operational TIDs in Delaware. Is there an experience that implementation of TID accelerates development or redevelopment within an area?
Yeah, so our experience is based on the Westtown TID, which is in the town of Middletown, and then Southern Newcastle County TID, which is south of the canal. Those are the two that have been in implementation the longest. And so for land use applications that are submitted consistent with the land use plan for the TID, it does help expedite development or redevelopment to the extent that the applications are consistent with the plan, through both the developers knowing what they have to pay, and then also the time aspect and not having to do a traffic impact study. So it can help and encourage redevelopment. It can be used as an economic development tool, and it's for where development comes in consistent with the plan.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions from the group for Sarah or for the City of Newark, Mike or Mary Ellen? Okay, we will move into the last module, which is on next steps. We just saw what types of technical analysis that we have completed as a part of this effort. Sarah, why don't you give us what are the next steps?
Yep. So for the next steps, the TID committee is going to consider any input received through this public workshop and finalize a service standard recommendation. And then DelDOT will use the service standards to identify needed transportation improvements and work with the TID committee, the planning commission, and then city council to finalize the land use and transportation plan for the TID. And this is anticipated to be complete by the end of this calendar year. We've already started to model different transportation improvements to try to identify different options for what improvements could solve the delay problems and meet the service standards. So that's well underway. And then once agreement is reached on the land use and transportation plan, then DelDOT will develop cost estimates and packaging of the needed improvements into projects to form the capital transportation program for the TID. And DelDOT will also provide options for the infrastructure fee program and the monitoring program. And then those three things, the TID, CTP, the fee program and monitoring program, will be considered by the TID committee and the planning commission. They'll both make recommendations, and then everything will go to city council for approval. And then once city council and DelDOT come to an agreement, the TID agreement will be amended to include all of the elements. And then the TID fee collection and implementation will begin. And the goal is to have this completed in the first half of calendar year 2021.
Thanks, Sarah. I think there is a comment which is related to the previous section, the last question that I asked. Mark Cote says, previous TIDs in Western and Southern Newcastle County were chosen. A lot of development was already planned. Mark, do you want to basically elaborate on your comment or provide additional explanation?
Sure, I can do that. I was just going to point out that the question was, did development accelerate development in the TID? And it's kind of hard to tell. It certainly makes it easier and more predictable. But the previous TIDs, as I said, were chosen where there was a lot of potential development. So it's hard to say whether it accelerated it or just we had already planned for that to happen.
Thanks, Mark. Any
other? It's a little bit of the it's a little bit of like the chicken and egg analogy, like which came first, because like you said, just doing the planning for it could have been what led to it happening.
Any other questions? We are coming to, basically we have completed all the 4 modules. I know we are almost coming up on our time for this evening. Any other questions that any of the participants have? If not, next slide, please. Thank you once again for participating, and basically there are other opportunities for asking questions or providing feedback. Once again, I want to highlight the project contacts, Mary Ellen and Sarah. Both of them will be more than happy to answer your questions. You can submit your questions. You can email those to either of them or basically call them. And also there is a survey on City of Newark's website where you can submit your questions or feedback. So definitely check that out. Again, a recording of this meeting will be uploaded on City's website in a couple of days. And you will also find a lot of TID material on that website also. So please review, please provide your feedback. And thank you once again for attending tonight's public meeting, and good night. Mary Ellen or Sarah, do you have any closing comments?
No, I just want to echo your thanks and thank you everyone for participating in this meeting, and I look forward to your feedback and comments. Thank you.
Yep, on behalf of DelDOT, thank you for attending as well.
So that concludes our public meeting for the evening. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night.